The bride poured red sangria all over my dress at my son's wedding. Then she smiled at me. Not an embarrassed smile. Not a nervous mistake. A smile that said she believed she had finally crossed a line she could never take back. The entire ballroom went silent. Music faded. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Nearly 180 guests turned toward me, waiting to see what I would do. Some expected tears. Some expected shouting. Some just wanted drama. But I didn't give them any of it. Instead, I slowly reached for the microphone near the wedding stage. My hands were steady. My voice was calm. And I said something that made the entire room freeze. Starting tomorrow, everything changes. A few guests exchanged confused looks. The bride's smile faded for the first time that night. And my son finally looked up at me nervous. My name is Patricia Wilson. I'm 61 years old, widowed, and I spent most of my life believing that family should be protected no matter what. That belief was tested the moment my son Jason moved back into my house 4 years ago. At first it didn't seem like a problem. He said it was temporary. Just a few months to get back on his feet. But temporary slowly turned into permanent. Then he met Amber. And everything changed. First she seemed perfect. Polite voice. Friendly smile. Careful manners. She would bring flowers when she visited. She would call me Miss Patricia, in a sweet tone that made everyone think she was respectful. Even I believed it in the beginning. But small things started to shift. Little comments that sounded like jokes. Little moments that felt slightly disrespectful but easy to ignore. One day, she looked around my living room and said, "This house feels a bit outdated, doesn't it?" She laughed after saying it. So I laughed too. That was my first mistake. Because once I accepted disrespect as a joke, it stopped being a joke for her. It became normal. Soon she was changing things in my house without asking. Rearranging furniture. Inviting people over without permission. Treating my home like it belonged to her. And Jason never stopped it. Every time I tried to bring something up, he would sigh and say, "Mom, it's not a big deal." But it was a big deal. Just wasn't a big deal to him. For years passed like that. Slowly, quietly, until I no longer recognized my own home as a place where my voice mattered. Then came the wedding. The most expensive day of their lives. And somehow I was paying for most of it. The venue. The decorations. The extra expenses no one planned for. Whenever I asked questions, Amber would smile and say, "It's just one day, Patricia. Don't you want Jason to be happy?" And of course I did. That's what made it so easy for them. By the time the wedding arrived, I was already emotionally tired. But I told myself it would all be worth it. That maybe after marriage things would settle down. That maybe Amber would change. That maybe Jason would finally step up. But I was wrong. The reception hall looked beautiful. Lights sparkling across crystal decorations. Soft music playing. Guests laughing and celebrating like nothing in the world could go wrong. For a brief moment I even felt peace. Then I saw her. Amber walked toward me holding a glass of red sangria. She stopped right in front of me, close enough that I could see her expression clearly. And without hesitation, she tilted the glass. Cold liquid poured over my head, my face, and my dress. The ballroom erupted into gasps. I stood still, completely soaked, completely humiliated. Amber leaned in slightly and whispered, "Maybe now you'll finally learn your place." I slowly wiped my face. Then I turned my eyes toward Jason. He was standing just a few steps away. He saw everything, every second of it. And instead of defending me, he gave a small nervous laugh. "Mom, don't make this a scene," he said quietly. That was the moment something inside me shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, just permanently. I picked up the microphone from the table, looked across the silent room, and said, "Enjoy the rest of tonight. Because starting tomorrow, I stop being the person who fixes everything." I placed the microphone down gently, picked up my purse, and walked out of the ballroom without another word. Behind me I could hear voices calling my name, but I didn't turn back. Because for the first time in years, I finally understood something important. If you never set boundaries, people will keep crossing them. And tonight, that was about to change. The morning after the wedding felt different. Not peaceful. Not healing. just quiet in a way that made everything feel heavier. I sat in my kitchen with a cup of black coffee, staring out the window as sunlight slowly filled the room. For the first time in years, I wasn't rushing to fix anything. No calls, no messages, no apologies, just silence. Around 10 a.m., I heard the front door open. Jason walked in first, still in his wedding suit jacket, looking tired and uncomfortable. Behind him was Amber, sunglasses on, lips tight with anger. She dropped her bag on the floor like she owned the place. "You really embarrassed us last night," she said immediately. "In front of everyone." I didn't react. I just took a sip of coffee. Jason sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Mom, we didn't expect you to react like that." I finally looked at him. "React?" I repeated. She poured a drink on my head in front of 200 people. Amber rolled her eyes. "Oh please. It was just a joke. You're acting like it was some crime." That word, joke, hit something inside me, because that was exactly how everything had been dismissed for years. A joke when she insulted me. A joke when she rearranged my home. A joke when Jason stayed silent. I placed my cup down carefully. "No," I said quietly. "That wasn't a joke. That was disrespect." Jason stepped forward. "Mom, can we just move past it? Today is supposed to be about starting fresh." "Fresh?" I asked. Then I stood up. Slowly, calmly, and walked to the kitchen drawer. I pulled out a small envelope and placed it on the counter. "What's that?" Jason asked. "Something I should have done a long time ago," I replied. Inside the envelope was a notice I had already prepared earlier that morning. Amber frowned. "Is that for us?" I nodded once. "You're both going to need to understand something," I said. "This house is not a shared space. It never was." Jason's expression changed instantly. "Mom, what are you saying?" I looked him directly in the eyes. "I'm saying I had new locks installed this morning." Silence. Amber laughed nervously. "You're joking." I shook my head. "No, I'm not." Jason blinked. "You locked us out of the master bedroom?" I corrected him. "I secured my privacy." "There's a difference." Amber crossed her arms. "This is insane. We're married now. We should be able to move into the main room. That's normal." That sentence told me everything. She didn't see boundaries. She saw access. An entitlement. Jason stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Mom, we need space. We were planning to." "Planning?" I interrupted. "You planned my house without me?" That shut him up. For the first time, he had nothing to say. I opened the drawer again and placed a key on the counter. "This is for the guest room," I said. "You can stay there for now." Amber scoffed. "For now?" I nodded. "Yes, for now." Jason looked completely lost. "Mom, what is happening to you?" I stared at him for a long moment. Then I said something I had been holding in for years. "Nothing is happening to me, Jason. I'm finally happening to myself." Amber grabbed her bag. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "You're punishing us over one small incident." I didn't respond, because I realized something important. She truly believed humiliation was small. That was the problem. Jason followed her upstairs, trying to calm her down. I stayed in the kitchen alone, listening to doors open, closets being checked, arguments starting upstairs. And for the first time, I didn't go up to fix it. I simply finished my coffee. But deep down I already knew. This was only the beginning of a much bigger storm. Because once people realize they can no longer control you, they usually try harder before they let go. And Amber was not someone who let go easily. By the next evening, the atmosphere in the house had completely changed. Not louder, not calmer, heavier. Jason barely spoke to me. Amber made sure to speak about me instead of to me. And every word she said carried the same message. You went too far. But in her version of events, I was the problem. Not the whine. Not the humiliation. Not Jason's silence. Just me setting boundaries. That night, she came downstairs holding a grocery receipt like it was evidence in a court case. This card was declined, she said sharply, throwing it onto the counter. Jason followed behind her, frustrated. Mom, what did you do? The family card isn't working. I looked at the receipt calmly. I canceled it. Silence. Jason frowned. You what? I leaned back in my chair. That card was my contribution to household groceries, I said. And after last night, I decided it's no longer necessary. Amber laughed like she couldn't believe it. You're really doing this over that? I looked at her. That? I repeated. You mean you pouring sangria over my head in front of everyone? Jason rubbed his face. Mom, we already talked about this. It was a mistake. A mistake, I said quietly. No, Jason. A mistake is forgetting something. That was a choice. Amber crossed her arms. You're punishing us financially because you can't handle a joke. I stood up slowly. No, I replied. I'm correcting a pattern. Jason stepped forward. Mom, we don't have enough right now to cover everything. You know that. I nodded. Yes. That's the point. That made him pause. Amber rolled her eyes. You have money. You just like control. That line told me everything I needed to know. Because in her mind, support wasn't generosity. It was obligation. I walked to the drawer and pulled out another paper. This is your car insurance notice, I said, placing it on the table. I removed you from the policy. Jason froze. What? You'll need to arrange your own coverage by the end of the month. The room went completely silent. Even Amber stopped talking. Jason's voice dropped. You're serious right now? I nodded. Yes. Amber scoffed again, but this time there was less confidence in it. This is insane. You can't just shut everything off like this. I looked at her directly. I didn't shut anything off. You did that when you poured wine on my head and called it a joke. Jason sat down slowly, staring at the papers like they didn't make sense. We can't handle all of this at once, he muttered. I answered calmly. Then you'll learn how. Amber grabbed her phone and stormed upstairs. Fine, she snapped. We'll figure it out ourselves. Don't expect us to come begging. I didn't respond, because I knew something she didn't. Begging was not the next step. Chaos was. The house grew quieter after that. But not peaceful. Clothes piled up. Dishes stayed in the sink. Food orders replaced home cooking. And for the first time in years, I didn't fix a single thing. Jason looked exhausted every day. Amber grew more irritated every hour. And I started sleeping better than I had in years. But one evening as I was reading in my room, I overheard something that made me pause. Amber was on the phone. Her voice was low. Careful. I don't care how it happens, she said. This house should already feel like ours. A pause. Then she added, and if she keeps acting like this, we'll just have to speed things up. I froze, slowly lowered my book, and realized something that made my stomach tighten. This wasn't just entitlement anymore. This was turning into a plan. And whatever Amber was planning, it was only getting started. I didn't sleep much after what I overheard. This house should already feel like ours. Those words kept repeating in my mind, not because they were shocking, but because they were confident. Too confident. The next morning I decided something simple. I would stop reacting emotionally and start observing. Jason left early for work without saying much. Amber stayed home. That alone already told me enough. By midday I noticed something strange. She was measuring the spare room near the hallway. Again. Not casually, not jokingly, deliberately. She had a notebook open, writing down dimensions like she had authority over the space. When I walked in, she didn't even look embarrassed. I'm converting this room, she said. To what? I asked. A small lounge space, she replied. Since you don't want us using the main areas freely, we need something comfortable. I stayed quiet for a moment. Then I said calmly, this is not your house to redesign. She finally looked at me and smiled slightly. It will be, she said. That one sentence confirmed everything I needed to know. But I didn't argue. Arguing only feeds people like her. Instead, I nodded once and walked away. That afternoon, I made a phone call. A real estate agent I had known for years, Diane. I asked her to come quietly. No announcements. No discussions. Just a private consultation. When she arrived, I handed her the property documents. Everything was in my name. Fully. No shared ownership. No legal gray area. Just mine. She reviewed everything carefully and looked up at me. "You're in a strong position," she said. "If you decide to sell, it can happen quickly." I nodded. "Prepare it," I said. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just firmly. That evening, Jason came home earlier than usual. He looked exhausted. Amber followed him in, already complaining about something. But they stopped when they saw boxes in the living room. Empty ones. Stacked neatly. Jason frowned. "Mom, what are those for?" I closed the book I was reading and looked at him. "Packing," I said calmly. Amber laughed nervously. "Packing? For what?" I stood up slowly. And this time I didn't hesitate. "I've made a decision," I said. Jason's face tightened immediately. "What decision?" I looked at both of them. "My house is going on the market." Silence hit the room like a wall. Amber blinked. Then laughed. "You can't be serious." Jason didn't speak. He just stared at me. And for the first time, he looked scared. Because he understood something before she did. This wasn't a threat. It was already in motion. And they had no idea how fast everything was about to change. Jason didn't speak for almost a full minute. Amber broke the silence first. "You're selling the house because of a disagreement?" she asked, almost laughing. "This is ridiculous." But her voice didn't sound confident anymore. It sounded tight. Controlled. I picked up one of the empty boxes and folded it properly. "This isn't a disagreement," I said calmly. "This is the result of 4 years of ignoring respect." Jason stepped forward. "Mom, please don't do this without talking to us first." I looked at him. "Talking?" I repeated softly. "I tried talking for years." He had no answer to that. Amber crossed her arms, trying to regain control. "So what now? You're just going to throw us out?" I shook my head. "No. You're going to move out because I sold the house." That sentence finally broke the illusion. Jason's face went pale. "You sold it?" I nodded. "Yes. The buyers are already arranged. The paperwork is done. You have time to find a place, but not much." Silence filled the room again. This time no one had anything clever to say. Amber finally lost her composure. "You can't do this to us." I looked at her steadily. "I didn't do this to you. I did this for myself." Jason sat down slowly on the sofa, staring at the floor. His voice was low. "We don't have savings like that. Mom, we can't just move overnight." For a moment I felt it. That familiar pull. The urge to fix it. To soften it. To rescue him. But I didn't. Because that was the cycle that had brought me here in the first place. I took a breath. And said something I had never said to my son before. "You are both adults," I said. "And adults solve problems they create." Amber grabbed her phone and walked away. Already calling someone. Probably a friend. Probably a plan. Jason stayed seated. Quiet. Defeated. The next few weeks passed quickly. Not peacefully. But quickly. The house became a war of silence and packing boxes. Amber complained constantly. Jason tried to negotiate. But there was nothing left to negotiate. I hired movers. I arranged everything legally. I prepared my new place across town. A small, quiet townhouse with sunlight and no chaos. For the first time in years, I felt something I had almost forgotten. Peace. On the final day, the movers carried out the last of my furniture. Jason stood in the hallway watching. Amber was already outside, waiting in a taxi, angry and distant. Jason finally walked up to me. "Mom," he said quietly. I looked at him. He hesitated. Then added, "I'm sorry. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't enough. But it was something." I nodded slowly. "I know," I said. "But sorry doesn't rebuild what was broken." He lowered his head. I continued. "You'll figure things out, Jason. I know you will." He looked up slightly. "And us." I paused. Then answered honestly. "You'll both figure yourselves out too." I stepped outside. The air felt different. Lighter. As the door closed behind me, I didn't feel anger anymore. Not even sadness. Just clarity. Because I finally understood something simple. Peace doesn't come from people changing. It comes from refusing to live where you are disrespected. And for the first time in years, my life belonged to me again.